away.
During Hollywood's golden age, countless actresses stepped in front of the camera and gave performances full of grace, emotion, and raw talent. Some became household names remembered for decades, but many others, just as talented and captivating, quietly disappeared from the spotlight. Overshadowed by more famous stars or pushed aside by changing tastes, their names have faded, but their contributions remain. Today, we're bringing them back into focus to honor the women who once shined just as brightly, but were nearly lost to history.
The ring is so long, he's gonna be A-double-U-O-A.
Constance Bennett. In the early 1930s, Constance Bennett was one of the most prominent leading ladies in Hollywood. For a time, her fame even eclipsed that of Joan Crawford and Bette Davis. As the shining star of RKO Pictures, she delivered memorable performances in films like Common Clay, 1930, and What Price Hollywood, 1932. But as the decade moved on and newer talents entered the scene, her spotlight gradually dimmed. Thelma Todd. Known for her charm and impeccable comedic timing, Thelma Todd often shared the screen with comedy greats like the Marx Brothers and Buster Keaton. She was a beloved figure in early Hollywood comedies. Tragically, her life came to an end in 1935 under circumstances that still raise questions today. Her passing marked one of the most unsettling chapters in Hollywood history. Norma Shearer. A defining face of MGM's golden years, Norma Shearer built a career on roles that combined sophistication and strength. She starred in critically acclaimed productions like The Divorcée, 1930, and Marie Antoinette, 1938. After losing her husband, the legendary producer Irving Thalberg, she quietly stepped away from acting and gradually withdrew from the public eye, leaving behind a legacy often overshadowed by time. Gladys Coopers. Gladys Cooper built a remarkable stage career in Britain before stepping into the world of Hollywood films later in life. Her refined presence and commanding performances earned her 3 Academy Award nominations in Now, Voyager, 1942, The Song of Bernadette, 1943, and My Fair Lady, 1964. Still, her name rarely receives the same recognition as the younger stars she supported on screen. Ann Miller. Known for her dazzling speed and precise footwork, Ann Miller lit up the screen with high-energy tap numbers in musicals like Easter Parade, 1948, and On the Town, 1949. Though she had star quality in every step, she was often placed in supporting roles overshadowed by more prominent leading ladies of the time. Anna May Wong. As one of the first major Chinese-American actresses in Hollywood, Anna May Wong broke barriers in an industry that offered few opportunities to performers of color. While her roles in films such as Shanghai Express, 1932, showed her undeniable talent, she was frequently confined to limited or stereotyped characters, keeping her from achieving the stardom she deserved. Hattie McDaniel. Hattie McDaniel carved her name into history by becoming the first African American to receive an Oscar, thanks to her role in Gone with the Wind, 1939. Despite this milestone, she was often restricted to servant roles, a reflection of the harsh limitations placed on black actors in that era. Her talent was unquestionable, even if Hollywood failed to offer her the variety of roles she earned. Kay Francis. There was a time when Kay Francis reigned as the highest-paid actress in Hollywood. Known for her elegant screen presence and stylish roles in early 1930s, films like Trouble in Paradise, 1932, she seemed unstoppable. But tensions behind the scenes, especially with her home studio Warner Brothers, led to fewer roles and a gradual decline. In just a few short years, she went from top billing to near-forgotten status. Helen Twelvetrees. In the early sound era, Helen Twelvetrees stood out for her emotional performances in heartfelt dramas, including Millie, 1931. She built a reputation as a leading lady with real depth. Yet, as the industry shifted and new faces took the spotlight, her career slowly lost momentum. Today, her name is rarely mentioned, despite the impact she once had. Dorothy McCale. Dorothy McCale made a smooth leap from silent pictures into talkies, a transition many struggled with. Her work in Safe in Hell, 1931, showed a boldness and charisma that set her apart. But by the late 1930s, roles became scarce. She stepped away from the spotlight and eventually settled in Hawaii, where she lived a quiet and private life, far from the buzz of Hollywood. Jean Parker. Jean Parker is fondly remembered for her role as Beth in the 1933 classic Little Women, a performance filled with grace and warmth. Though she continued working in both film and television for years, she never quite reached top-tier stardom. Her talent kept her steadily employed, but she often remained just outside the spotlight, remembered more by film enthusiasts than the public at large. Lois Wilson. Lois Wilson once held star status during the silent film era and even portrayed Daisy Buchanan in the 1926 adaptation of The Great Gatsby. Her performances were refined and expressive, perfectly suited for silent cinema. But when sound entered the picture, like many of her peers, she struggled to adapt. Gradually, her name slipped away from headlines, and she quietly stepped out of the spotlight. Alen McMahon. Alen McMahon was a master of subtle expression and quiet strength, making her a standout in supporting roles throughout the 1930s and 1940s. Her performance in Gold Diggers of 1933 is still admired today. Though she worked consistently for decades, Hollywood seldom gave her the starring roles that might have secured her place among the greats. Rochelle Hudson. Rochelle Hudson was a familiar face in 1930s Hollywood, appearing in notable films like Imitation of Life, 1934, and even providing an early voice for Betty Boop. She showed remarkable versatility on screen, but for reasons never fully clear, she didn't reach the fame of her peers. Over time, her name faded into the background of film history. Mae Clarke. Mae Clarke had several unforgettable moments on screen, perhaps most famously the grapefruit scene in The Public Enemy, 1931, opposite James Cagney. She also made an impression as Elizabeth in Frankenstein, 1931. Despite these highlights, her career lost steam in the years that followed, and she never fully recaptured her early success. Margaret Lindsay. Margaret Lindsay often drew comparisons to Bette Davis, and even appeared alongside her in Jezebel, 1938. Although she brought depth and elegance to her roles, she was usually cast in supporting parts rather than leads. She continued acting steadily until the 1950s, but never quite reached household name status. Ruth Chatterton. In the early 1930s, Ruth Chatterton commanded the screen with strength and elegance, especially in films like Dodsworth, 1936. She had a sharp mind and a bold spirit, eventually stepping away from acting to focus on writing and aviation. Though she built a remarkable life beyond Hollywood, her film career has quietly faded from public memory. Clare Trevor. Clare Trevor made her mark as a tough, compelling presence in 1940s film noir, and won an Academy Award for her role in Key Largo, 1948. Her performances were rich with complexity and emotion. Yet, even with a strong body of work, she's often overlooked in favor of more widely celebrated names like Lauren Bacall. Lillian Gish. Lillian Gish was one of the foundational figures of early American cinema. With iconic roles in silent classics like The Birth of a Nation, 1915, and Way Down East, 1920, she helped define the language of film acting. Amazingly, she continued working well into her 90s. Still, in today's conversations about Hollywood history, her name is too often left out. Anita Page. Anita Page was a bright young star at MGM during the late 1920s and early 1930s, often appearing opposite Joan Crawford. With her charm and expressive style, she became a fan favorite. But at the height of her fame, she chose to leave Hollywood after marrying a naval officer. Though she later returned for small parts, her once promising career never fully resumed. Evelyn Venibal. Evelyn Venibal is best known as the elegant face behind the Columbia Pictures Torch Lady logo and as the gentle voice of the Blue Fairy in Disney's Pinocchio, 1940. Despite these memorable contributions, her time in Hollywood was quite brief, as she chose to retire early and pursue a career in education. Bebe Daniels. Starting as a silent film star, Bebe Daniels smoothly made the jump to talking pictures, starring in notable films like 42nd Street, 1933. As musical films evolved and the spotlight shifted, she relocated to England, where she successfully built a career in radio and television away from the Hollywood scene. Helen Chandler. Helen Chandler gained fame as the female lead in the classic horror film Dracula, 1931, starring opposite Bela Lugosi. Although she showed great promise, her career was hindered by personal struggles, including battles with alcoholism, which eventually forced her to step away from acting much earlier than expected. Miriam Hopkins. Known as one of the leading ladies of early screwball comedies, Miriam Hopkins shone in films like Trouble in Paradise, 1932, and Design for Living, 1933. Yet her off-screen conflicts, especially her well-known rivalry with Bette Davis, tended to overshadow her impressive talent. As a result, actresses like Carole Lombard and Katharine Hepburn often took center stage in Hollywood's memory. Louise Fazenda. Louise Fazenda was a standout comedic actress during the silent film era, known for her work in slapstick comedies alongside stars like Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle. Though she moved into talking pictures without trouble, she mostly took on supporting roles. As Hollywood's style of comedy shifted, her presence on screen gradually diminished. Evelyn Brent. Famed for her portrayals of femme fatales in silent films, Evelyn Brent made a strong impression as a dangerous and alluring woman. Yet, with the arrival of sound films, she found it difficult to maintain her status, and her career slowly declined. Fay Ray. Fay Ray is forever linked to one of cinema's most famous scenes, her screams on the Empire State Building in King Kong, 1933. Beyond that iconic moment, she enjoyed a varied career in early Hollywood, starring in dramas and horror films. Still, that unforgettable role often overshadows her wider body of work. Corinne Griffith. Known as the Orchid Lady of the Screen, Corinne Griffith was a major star during the silent film era. After stepping away from acting, she turned her talents to real estate and writing, building a new career. Despite her past fame, today she's rarely mentioned among Hollywood's legends. Alice Faye. Alice Faye was a beloved musical star throughout the 1930s and 1940s, famous for her rich, warm singing voice and charismatic performances in films like Alexander's Ragtime Band, 1938. After stepping away from Hollywood in the mid-1940s, she never quite returned to the spotlight with the same impact. Dolores Del Rio. Dolores Del Rio broke ground as one of the first Latina actresses to gain major recognition in Hollywood. She starred in silent-era favorites such as Ramona, 1928, and Evangeline, 1929. While she adapted well to sound films, Hollywood's racial prejudices limited her chances, prompting her to find more significant success in Mexican cinema. Madge Bellamy. Madge Bellamy was a prominent silent film star, known for leading roles in movies like Lorna Doone, 1922, and White Zombie, 1932. However, her career took a downturn after conflicts with studio executives and involvement in a scandalous affair, which led to her being blacklisted and ultimately forgotten by mainstream audiences. Billy Dove. Considered one of the most beautiful actresses of the 1920s, Billy Dove enjoyed widespread fame in silent films. Yet, after marrying into wealth in the 1930s, she chose to retire from Hollywood, leaving behind a career that held much promise but ended prematurely. Pola Negri. Born in Poland, Pola Negri rose to fame as one of silent cinema's most captivating stars, known for her intense performances and glamorous image. She also attracted headlines with high-profile romances, including with Charlie Chaplin and Rudolph Valentino. However, with the introduction of sound films and shifting audience tastes in the 1930s, her Hollywood career gradually faded. Edv Fuier. Edv Fuier was a celebrated French actress who made a brief foray into Hollywood, but never managed to secure lasting fame in the American film industry. She continued to enjoy success in European cinema, yet her name remains relatively unknown in the history of Hollywood. Anne Blythe. Anne Blythe rose to stardom as a teenager, earning an Academy Award nomination at just 16 for her intense performance in Mildred Pierce, 1945. Audiences were drawn to her mix of elegance and edge. Sadly, a serious injury from a sledding accident stalled her momentum just as her career was taking off. Although she continued to work in film, she never regained the same level of success. Time may have pushed these actresses out of the spotlight, but their stories still deserve to be told. If one of them stood out to you, let us know in the comments. And if you'd like to see more forgotten faces and untold stories from old Hollywood, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.